Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to V&A Dundee's Juniper Auditorium. This is a really special event for us tonight. We've got one of Dundee's own, or Muirhead's own, Brian Rennie, world-famous fashion designer, in the building tonight. I'm not going to say too much about Brian because it'll all become apparent over the course of the evening. I do want to just say welcome. My name's Barry Ferguson. I'm the Director of Philanthropy and Partnerships here at the museum. And basically me and my team are responsible for raising money to keep the museum going. I think most of you in the room tonight are members, so I just want to thank you all for your support. We wouldn't be here without you, and I hope you continue to support for many years to come. I'm not going to say anything about Brian, other than it's been an absolute pleasure to get to know Brian and Ferdinand. Where is he? He's hiding back there. Brian and Ferdinand over the past few years. We're so lucky to have you as friends of the museum, and again, I hope we see lots of you in the years to come. I do want to introduce Kirsty Hassard, who is going to be asking Brian questions. Kirsty is our resident fashion expert in the museum. So she has a formal biography, which I better read to you.
You don't have to, don't worry. You can ad-lib it.
She's a curator and fashion historian, currently curator in the exhibitions team here at V&A Dundee, and she previously worked in the furniture, textiles and fashion department at V&A South Kensington. She was co-curator of Tartan, the first major exhibition that was curated here in Dundee at the V&A, and our most successful exhibition to date in terms of visitor numbers. And we're hoping that Tartan will be going on tour around the world over the next few years. Kirsty's worked on a range of exhibitions, including Night Fever, Designing Club Culture, and Mary Quant here at V&A Dundee, and Balenciaga Shaping Fashion at V&A South Kensington. She's published on women and work and the relationship between fashion and print culture in the 18th century. So I'm now going to hand over to Kirsty. I hope you have a fabulous evening, and thanks again for coming.
Thank you, Barry. So thank you so much for the introduction, Barry, and it's such a pleasure to speak with you this evening, Brian. I'm really looking forward to hearing how our chat unfolds. And as Barry outlined in my introduction, I'm a massive fan of fashion. It's been my career for the past almost 15 years now. So there's so much personal interest from my side. And I'm sure it'll be an evening of fashion and celebrity chat, which I'm sure everyone is going to love. And really getting to understand that amazing story of your career and its development from Muirhead to Munich, which is the title of our conversation this evening. I will also be controlling the slides as well, and there's lots of beautiful slides to look at, as well as obviously these amazing garments that we're privileged to have in the room with us this evening. Should also say as well, so Brian and I will speak for about 45 to 50 minutes, and then of course there'll be a chance for some questions at the end. To kick off and getting a sense of that origin story. So you've had an amazing and really exciting career in fashion over the years, and I'd love to know, how on earth does a guy who grew up in a council house in Muirhead end up in the fashion industry?
Well, thank you very much for coming, first of all. It's great to see a lot of faces from the past. Really honoured that you came this way. It feels a bit like my funeral when I see all the people here. I started off, I used to sketch a lot when I was a kid, drove my mum mad. My brother was always out playing football and I was always in drawing. There used to be the Cilla Black show. And so I started to draw little figurines with dresses for Cilla Black, who incidentally years later became one of our best customers in the Sloane Street show.
Very full circle story.
So that's basically how we started off drawing, you know. And my mum was totally against fashion. When I found out that you can actually study fashion, she was like, no way, you're not doing that. You know, you're good at languages, you should be a French teacher. But I had this most amazing teacher at Harris Academy, Rosemary Matheson Deere, who really encouraged me. And my mum had an old sewing machine, one of those, trundle ones from Singer that you probably all know. And she used to make all my sister's clothes. So one day she showed me how to use it. My granny used to do a lot of knitting as well. So between them both, they kind of taught me the basics. I studied fashion and fabric at Harris Academy, the first boy ever to do that. I got a lot of stick for that, I tell you. But then I said, no, that's it. I want to go to London. I want to study fashion. And I didn't know anything about fashion colleges. It was actually my girlfriend at the time. She came up from London, and she told me there was fashion colleges. I did some research, and I said, that's it. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
And I went down at that time. It was very, very difficult to get into fashion college. There was a huge amount of people that applied for only 24 places at Ravensbourne College of Art. And I was accepted. So it started off great. I got my BA after 3 years at Ravensbourne, and then I applied for the Royal College of Art. 150 people applied for 15 spaces. I got offered one, so I was really excited. But at that time, you only got a grant for 3 years from the Scottish Government. I'd started college. My mum and dad didn't have money to help out. And I thought I was going to have to leave after, being one of the 150 people to be accepted. So I spoke to college and I said, look, I think I'm going to have to leave. I can't afford to stay here. And they said, no, we'll work something out. So they paid the fees. They had a college fund. And one of my lecturers took pity on me and said, you can stay in my basement with my stepson for £30 a week. Which sounds like nothing nowadays, but at that time, £30 was a lot of money, and I remember having to call my dad, I can't pay the rent, can you help me out? And then another one of my lecturers said, you can have 1 day off a week at college, and you can come and work for me in my design studio. So basically, they supported me through college, and it was an amazing time at the Royal College of Art because at that time it was all about working with industry. So 1 week would be doing a project for Donna Karan, and next week we'd be doing a project for Mustang Jeans, and next week we'd be doing whatever, And it was one of those things you had to do everything. So from the first sketch, they give us a project, we did sketches, we showed them, and they said, okay, that's fine, you're going to make this. And you had to make it, you had to physically do the pattern. So we got taught pattern cutting, we got taught sewing, tailoring, so you had to make it. And you had to choose either knitting or print, and I hated doing print because it was so technical. You had to mix up the right amount of chemicals and colours and whatever. And me, no, I'll do knitting. Until I discovered that you only had like 3 or 4 days to actually do something. So I remember one time I got my granny to knit me one of the Fair Isle sweaters from a project. Someone sent it down in a bus. I went to Victoria bus station to pick it up, and it was used in the project. So it was an amazing time, but that's basically how it all started.
Yeah, and I guess, the context of that is, of course, it was the 80s, when you're starting that career journey. So I was wondering if you could tell us more about what it was like to be in London during that time, and just all these amazing creative people that you must have been surrounded by when you were creating.
It was an amazing time. When you think in London that this was the time where it wasn't just the punks, it was the, these crazy nightclubs and everything, and everybody thinks that students are always out partying. We never had time for that.
Just working too hard.
I think in the 3 years I was there, I was maybe out once or twice, but it was an amazing creative time. The fashion became such a big thing, but what got me really excited was every time I came back to Dundee, I met Irvin from Jack and Irvin hairstylists, and they had the most amazing ideas and said, let's put on fashion shows. So we actually put fashion shows on here together with another designer, Shanonda, who was at Ravensbourne. And it was really creative working with these amazing hairdressers. We put on a show at the Rep, Dundee Rep. And it was just a great, really exciting time.
Yeah.
The most exciting thing was, of course, because we were working with industry so much, we had all these projects, and I won one of the projects, which was for Mustang jeans, and the prize was a week in Hong Kong to work with them over there. And that was basically just a party week in Hong Kong where you did a few designs, but they offered me a job. And the college was also very good at getting you to do summer placements. So I did 3 months with Daniel Hester in Paris, doing menswear. At the time where they were doing these big fashion show in Paris during Men's Fashion Week. So that was really exciting to experience that. They offered me a job. And then the woman, the lecturer who was doing this design work for us, she also offered me a job. And then I'd done a 3-month work in Italy with Eriuno, which was designed by Giorgio Armani at the time, and they offered me a job. But the funny thing was, when it came to the end of college, I still hadn't decided what I wanted to do. And when I was at Ravensbourne, the first year students always just to help the third year students with their collection, whatever they needed done. And I helped this girl called Karen Baker, who ended up going to Escada. And Escada was coming in to the Royal College to look for a new designer. And they were interviewing people. And the college said to me, you shouldn't go in for an interview because you've already got 4 job offers. And I said, look, let me just go in. I just want to say hello to Karen, you know, because I know her. And said, okay, fine. So I went in, and Margareta Lai, the owner of Escada, this amazing, beautiful, tall, blonde Swedish woman, was there. I showed her my stuff, and I did a lot of dresses at college. Although, as a little aside, I started off designing menswear at college, and then one lecturer told me I should change to women's wear because my menswear was too feminine. The other woman said, no, you should do menswear. And then I was the first student at the Royal College to be allowed to do both. So my final collection was menswear and women's wear. So anyway, I went in for the interview, and Margaret Lai offered me a job. And I thought,
it's a testament to that incredible work,
I want to go to Munich, you know, because I knew Karen. And at first I wasn't 100% sure, but they said, we'll fly you over to Munich, come over, see the fashion show, and then meet everybody and decide. So they flew me over. I was supposed to stay for 1 night. I changed my flight and stayed a week and slept on Karen's sofa and had the best time and said, that's it.
And that was it,
sold.
Go to Munich.
So the first collection at Escada was actually this one. Margareta said to me, we don't do many dresses in the collection, so I'd like you to come up and do some dresses. So we did this collection that was based on Abraham fabrics, which were the most expensive silk fabrics in the world at that time.
Based in Switzerland.
In Switzerland, exactly, yeah. And then this was the very first photo shoot. I started in September with Escada. We had the fashion show in December, so it was very, very quick turnaround. And these were the first styles that I designed for them. And I was home in Muirhead for Christmas, and I got a phone call from Margareta, and she said, Brian, you were really, really good at the fashion show in Munich. You got on great with the models. Would you like to come to New York with us? I said, yes, sure, absolutely. And at that time, you needed a visa and everything. So she said, okay, come on. Let's come for 2 weeks to New York to do the catalogue shoot. So this was the very first shoot I did. The photographer was Albert Watson, this most amazing Scottish photographer from Dundee. His wife Liz, also from Dundee, and every time, you know, I met them over the years several times, we'd always be talking about the deep sea fish and chip shop, gauchos, everything typical from Dundee. But for me, you know, to come into New York in this really pretty grubby, horrible studio, it was down in the meat market. And at that time, it really was the meat market. Nowadays, it's a really, really cool place in New York where you've got these amazing boutiques and everything. At that time, it was rats in the street. It was all bloody carcasses being brought out. But my first trip to New York, I'll never forget it. We got picked up in this huge black stretch limousine, champagne in the back, a tray of cookies, a cheese plate. We stayed in the Plaza Hotel, which at that time was like hugely expensive, right on Central Park. It was amazing, you know. So we were working with all these top models. This one, for instance, Willow Bay, she was the face of Estee Lauder, the very first big model who got a huge campaign. I actually felt very, very guilty because Margareta demanded a lot from the models. And some models were really, really strong and could do the work easily. Whereas, you know, Willow was one of these just very pretty girls, and Margareta was always pushing her, be stronger, be harder. And that's when I learned I don't want to be like this. I don't want to, you know, be nasty to models. And you always get much more if you are nice to people. Yeah. These pictures here, this was the first show we did. The photo shoot was in January, and we did a fashion show 6 weeks later, and this was in the Pierre Hotel in New York. We were working with all the top models at the time. So as my first job to go from college straight into high fashion was really, really exciting.
Yeah, it must have been pretty incredible. Yeah, and I think circling back to that, what you're saying about models, obviously who you were working with were some of the top models of the 80s. Can you tell us a bit more about what it was like to work with them, with those household names?
It was amazing. I mean, this was my very first experience of, you know, working with these top models. I mean, Iman, Mrs. David Bowie. The camera sees things that other people don't see.
Yeah, they're kind of like the unsung heroes of the fashion
unbelievable.
industry. Yeah.
But she was the nicest girl ever. We worked with her a lot over the seasons, and she was very professional, very easy. And then the next big girl we used was Cindy Crawford. Beautiful, amazing girl. A bit tough to work with in that she knew exactly what she wanted. If she didn't like the shoes, she would tell you, you know? And this put me in a really, really difficult spot. I was the one who was responsible for addressing the girls, getting the outfits ready, and we always had 2 models every day. So you can imagine how much money we were spending on this over 2 weeks. But Cindy was the most amazing thing. And Margareta was very specific about the outfits. You know, this is the jacket, this is the blouse, this is what it has to be like. And Cindy would say, oh, I don't like the shoes. So I'm saying like, no, you have to wear these, you have to wear these. And Margareta in the end said, look, she knows what she's talking about, let her choose. So we did a lot of stuff with her. We introduced the first evening dresses. We had also Christy Turlington, although we only had her for 2 seasons because she got the Calvin Klein contract, so we couldn't work with her. She wasn't allowed to work with any other fashion companies. But beautiful girl, very easy to work with. Most of them were actually very, very easy. Funny.
Yeah.
This was the first shoot we did with Linda Evangelista, and this was the time when we started to go away from photographing just in the studio. This is where we said, okay, we'll do 3 days in the studio in New York, and then we go out to the Hamptons for the weekend and shoot there for a couple of days, which sounds amazing, but to get to the Hamptons in summer, where it's like main season, you were in the car for hours. And Margareta had this thing, I think she actually got a lot of fun out of it, is when we turned up at a location, you know, you'd been in a car for 3 hours, you'd unpacked everything. We started off to do the first day of the photo shoot with a new model, and then she would say, my God, this girl's amazing, I wish we had more clothes with her. So most of the time I would have to go back to New York, where we were storing the clothes in the Plaza Hotel, sometimes in the limo. A few times they put me in these tiny small planes that would fly from the Hamptons over there. So I'd fly to New York, go to the Plaza Hotel, pick up the clothes at midnight, drive 3 hours back to East Hampton, unpack everything for a 6 o'clock wake-up call.
So not
and
much
this
sleep.
was one of those days. But Linda was amazing, great to work with, very easy, very professional. This was Albert Watson, this famous Dundee photographer, who for me has got the best lighting and the most amazing guy. We did stuff in Morocco with him, he's amazing. And then the next shoot is the first day that Margareta left me on my own. And Margareta was very, very demanding. She was very scary. When you were working, you wouldn't dare go to the loo unless she said, let's have a break. It was that type of thing. You had a lot of respect for her. You would do anything for her. If she said we'd come in on a Sunday and we work, you were there on a Sunday, half an hour before she was coming in. But she was the most amazing woman to learn from. And she had a reputation for being very, very cold and very cool. But once you were in her team, you were family. And we would spend, as I say, 2 weeks on a photo shoot. And this happened in the beginning twice a year. And then in the end, it was 4 times a year we did this. And you weren't just, having wake-up call at 6 a.m. You were shooting all day. You were going out at night for drinks. You had dinner with the team, with the models, the photographers. We were flying all over the place. We did photo shoots in Jamaica. We did photo shoots in the south of France, all over the place. So you were with them day and night. So you became family, But this was the first day that she said, okay, we're going to leave early and go prepare the next shoot. You stay and finish off this shoot. So there's me, first time with Linda Evangelista. And it's like, but she loved them. So
rose to the occasion. Yeah, it looks incredible. Such wonderful photos.
And we started to push more the evening wear. Before Escada, when I first started, it was known for the blazers, for the blouses, for the trousers. And the first time we did dresses, it was the fashion show, everything was prepared, the collection was finished, and there's always that time until everything comes up. There's like a couple of weeks before everything is on the rack. And it was the most boring time because you were still doing fittings, but you had nothing to do basically except wait. And I started to sketch ball gowns with the fabrics that she had blazers made out of. And she came over and said, what are you doing? The collection's finished. And I said, no, but the fabrics are so nice. I thought they'd make nice dresses. And she said, no, we don't do dresses. She came back 5 minutes later with the head pattern maker. She said, put all the sketches out on the floor. I said, come on, let's do them for the fashion show. It's a bit of fun. And this was basically the start of the couture collection at Escada.
Incredible.
This was the first time we worked with Naomi. And as I say, it was my job. We had these, you have to think, this looks amazing day, beautiful weather. We'd been up since 6. We had these trailers or these caravans, basically, where we got the models dressed. We had 2 models a day. And at Escada, we got our money's worth out of these models. We made them work, When they do a shoot for Vogue, it's maybe 4 pictures a day. It's maybe 5 pictures a day. We were doing 15 to start with. Then we were doing 20. And then we were doing 30 pictures a day. So it was a conveyor belt. And it was my job to make sure that next girl was ready, standing, head to toe dressed, everything perfect, the jewellery ready. And you always had an extra, arms full of extra jewellery in case, you had to change stuff. And to get from the location van to where we were shooting was sometimes if you were on the sand dunes in the Hamptons, you were walking 10 minutes to the location in the heat, making sure you had everything you need. And when you got there, Margareta definitely would always say, have you got the belt with the elephant head? Oh, shit, no, run back and get it. And then this was years later. We used her again and gave her a wig, tried to make it look better. She could work like crazy. She had amazing moves.
Yeah, you can really tell that, yeah.
And this again, Albert Watson. So you could see Albert Watson, this Scottish guy, we kept going back and back.
Yeah, you can see why. They're incredible.
I was always pushing Margareta, take Albert.
Yeah. And to have that Dundee connection as well is, it was really wonderful.
And then this was one of my collections later when I was responsible for the whole thing. Then I brought her back in and did this black and white story on her again with a wig. And then this was a year later, we used her again for the spring-summer collection. And this was the time when more and more dresses were coming in the collection.
Yeah, you can really see that. Yeah, that.
And then Claudia Schiffer, German, on time, hard worker, did the business. professional. She was so easy to work with, no problem at all. There was not much chit chat from her. She wasn't on the phone. She came and she did her work.
And went
that
home.
was it. And again, this was where we did the big thing with the dresses. This was actually the first fabric that I pulled out that Margaret had done this jacket on the right. And then I said, that would be nice for dresses. And then these were the things that we did for the show out of it.
Yeah, some amazing fabric.
But the collection was very opulent. Escada was very look at me. It was, it was for these very, very rich women who either were very successful in their own right. I mean, the woman who wrote Scruples, Judith Krantz, she was the biggest Escada customer.
Yeah.
Celebrities started to come to us. Everybody was, Escada was a big, big thing in the 80s and 90s. It was you were either an Armani type customer or you were an Escada customer. And we got treated like royalty. Anytime we went anywhere, in hotels, when people knew you were from Escada, it was like, whoa. In America, the British press were kind of snooty, to be honest. It was very, it's not Jill Sand. It's not the kind of understated. It's very flashy. It's very loud. The Americans loved us, And at the time, I started to travel more. And we have these things in America called trunk shows for Neiman Marcus and for Saks. We were the number one vendor at Neiman Marcus. And so they would send me over to do these things called trunk shows. So one day you would be in Chicago, then you would fly at night and you would be the next day in Palm Springs, and then the next day you would be in San Antonio, and you would go into the Neiman Marcus store with what they call open to buy. So Neiman Marcus had bought a certain part of the collection, but the collection was so much bigger, there was other things that they couldn't afford to buy. So we would take these trunks or racks of clothes, and we'd have them laid out in the shop, and the customers would come in and they would special order them. And it became crazy. The business just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then when I took over Escada after Margareta died, I would go over and do a trunk show, and we would be doing at least 6 million in 5 days.
Incredible.
Of extra business on top of what they had bought. It was crazy.
Yeah, amazing.
I did a lot of tartan in the collection as well.
Yeah, hopefully we're going to talk about
later, yeah.
But nice to see, the kind of the origins of that, how it's again come full circle with
Tatiana Patit's a beauty, an absolute beauty. She was, curvy, she was feminine, she was very sexy, but she was also very laid back. Everything was slow, everything was, and this was again Margareta lifetime, so it was like, quick, get her ready, get her on the set. And I remember this shoot here, we were in a van, it was in East Hampton, it was like 40 degrees outside, it was really hot. So I got her into the leather skirt somehow, I don't know, but it was like we got her into it. And I said, please don't sit down because the leather's going to get really creased and everything. She looked at me, she lay down. What I have to find out really quickly is what gets the models ticking, what do they want to talk about, get them in a good mood. And with Tatiana, it was dolphins.
Oh, nice.
She loved dolphins. She loved saving the dolphins. She had a big thing for dogs. So that was it. So it was like, talk about dolphins, and she got on the set easy.
Yeah, and then you ended up with these beautiful photos.
Oh, Carla Bruni. She was a character. I could talk all night about her. Funny, a sweetheart, a mouth like a trooper. Very, very plummy voice. She comes from a very aristocratic family in Italy, but a mouth like a sewer. We used her a lot, so we became very, very friendly. And remember, you're not just working with these girls, you're going out to dinner with them, you're having drinks with them, you're having breakfast with them, you're with them day and night, you're traveling with them, you're on a plane with them, so you really got to know them well. So we got amazing gossip.
Yeah.
But amazing girl. We brought her over a lot for the fashion shows as well. This was a shoot we did in Paris at a nightclub, and I don't know if anybody's ever been to a nightclub during the day, but it's not very pleasant.
No.
The pictures look amazing here. We had 6 guys and Carla. So she was in her element. We had some pictures where she was dancing in the middle of 6 guys. The floor was sticky. The smell was awful. Stains everywhere. But I mean, it looks like the most amazing place, but it was a dump. But she had a lot of fun.
Power of photography,
Flirting
I guess,
like
isn't
crazy
it?
with all the guys. And this was an amazing shoot we did. This was in Paris. The one on the left, this we shot in the opera, Paris Opera. We had the most amazing places to shoot.
Yeah.
We were in the Pompidou Centre. We were in the Paris Opera. We've photographed in the Natural History Museum in London. We got in places you would not imagine. And then the other 2 pictures, this was in the Hotel Crillon in Paris, one of the most expensive hotels, where we had this most amazing suite with a huge balcony. So we did all these different scenes, like Taylor with a wedding dress. We were allowed to go into the kitchen, but we had a lot of fun because it was so amazing locations,
Yeah, that you would normally
And we
get
were
to.
flying first class. We were staying in the most amazing hotels. We were getting taken out for dinner every night to the most expensive restaurants. We had the most amazing catering at lunchtime. There was even one time I remember. I flew several times on Concorde. There was one time when I was responsible for the collection, Wolfgang came and said, Wolfgang Lai was the other owner of the company. It was his wife, Margareta, and after she died, I took over. And then he said, I need you in New York for a meeting. And I said, I can't come, I'm too busy with the collection. He said, no, I need you. I said, no, I'm not coming, I'm too busy with the collection. And he said, right, you fly in Concorde in the morning, you come to the meeting at 9 o'clock and you fly back in the afternoon, first class. Okay.
You just do it, right?
I was in New York for 2 hours. That was the most amazing time. It's things that people nowadays would never, ever experience. Yeah. Never, We also worked with a lot of models who became actresses. Famke Janssen, the Bond girl, she's a beautiful girl. We used her twice. We always tried to make the girls look really, really beautiful. I mean, the fashion was always, flashy, look at me, the most expensive fabrics. Money was no object, we would do these amazing belts, gloves. And then Monica Bellucci. And this was before they started acting, so we were very, very lucky to be able to get them at that exact time. A beauty, very, very nice. Again, these were Albert Watson pictures. And again, Albert Watson on the left. And then Carrie Otis, who was going out with Mickey Rourke at the time. And then this was just after the 9.5 Weeks film came out.
So I'm going to jump ahead to Escada. So as you've touched upon, you became creative director at a pretty young age, actually. How did that feel, and what were you through?
As I say, it started in 86, and Margaret had died, if I remember correctly, it was 93, 94. And it was a shock to us all. She didn't tell us she was sick. I'll never forget when she actually told me a little bit. We were on a plane coming back from LA on the way to New York, and I was sitting next to her. And she was a bit funny, and she said, I've got something I need to talk to you about. She said, I'm going to take a step back. I need to concentrate on myself for a while. And I need you guys to step up and do a bit more. And you've been great with the models and with the image and with the traveling to meet people. So I'd like you to take on more work. From that conversation to when she died was basically 8 months. It went so quick. She died of cancer. She left it too late. And we would go to her hospital bed with the colour concept and show her the ideas, and she worked right through to the end. But then I got handed the reins. Wolfgang called me in the office one day and he said, I want you to be, he called it prima inter pares, first amongst equals. So I want you to be the boss. And I said, okay. So all of a sudden I was responsible for this huge collection with sales points all around the world. I mean, just to put this into perspective, the boutique we had in New York was doing $20 million a year business. The Beverly Hills boutique was doing $16 million a year business. I mean, it was huge. We had a $60 million business at Neiman Marcus. We were everywhere. Russia, we were in China, we were everywhere. And all of a sudden, I'm responsible for collection. I had 19 designers. I had 45 pattern makers. And I had a sewing room with 40 women. And I had to keep them busy every day. And it wasn't just doing the collection. We introduced a second collection called Escada Sport. I introduced a new collection called Escada Couture. So I was responsible for these 3 collections, plus accessories, plus jewellery, plus the shops, how everything looked. If you can go back a little bit to the first one, I'll just explain this was my very first catalogue. So you can see all the other catalogues before were called Escada by Margareta Lai. And because, she was the founder of the company, we had discussions if we take Margareta Lai away or not. And we said, no, we keep it, but it's not by Margareta Lai, but Escada Margareta Lai. And this was my first collection, and I wanted to show that it was different, but not too different to scare off people. So this was the first time I put 2 girls on the cover, just to say it's different.
This is me making my
And the choice of model was a bit younger, a bit fresher, makeup a bit different. But that was the first time, and I thought, I don't want to go too far away, but we're going to go in small steps. So this was how we first started. And then it gradually carried on. And the second one, I got this girl, Cecilia Chancellor, who was going out with Brian Adams at the time. So we would get all this amazing backstage gossip about Brian Adams. But I chose her because I thought she looked like a young Margareta Lai. So it was like a bit of a homage to the founder. And then I went back and brought Tatiana Patitz out again. And then the first girl we ever put under contract, all the other models were just paid for by the day for the rights. But this was the first time we said, we're going to put this girl under contract. Paulina Poroskova, who was going out with Rico Kasich from the Cars. And she became a very, very good friend. I'm still friends with her. We still communicate on Instagram and everything. And the most amazing girl. Amazing story as well. She was a refugee who ended up through from Czechoslovakia through Sweden to America, but the most unmodel-like model you've ever met. Didn't like makeup, very kind of messy, easy dress, not at all glamorous, but she was one of those makeup, hair, the camera, wow. Yeah. And the sweetest girl. So we used her for 3 or 4 seasons as the signature Escada girl. Did these other 2 with her again, where we did the hair much softer. And then the next girl I put under contract was Kylie Bax, this New Zealand model. I fell in love with her because I thought she looked like a young Margareta Lai. And we were getting to the time where we said, okay, we have to go away from the label Margareta Lai. I'd become more confident. My boss had seen that I could do the job, and he was giving me more and more freedom. We had this thing called a creative committee, where there was 4 of us, where we decided basically anything creative. So I was there from the fashion, the marketing point of view. But anytime we introduced new coat hangers, carrier bags, the shop design for London or for Beverly Hills, the furniture, anything that was creative, the new perfumes, if we're going to do jewelry collection, we sat down together and did this. But I was basically given free rein to go ahead with it.
Incredible.
And then we did an anniversary issue where we did all the different covers from Escada. And then you can see here on the right, this was the first time we changed a new logo. So I'd become confident enough, said now it's time to go away. Margareta lies away from the title. It's just going to be Escada, fresher, more modern logo. And then the photo shoots started to get a bit more exotic. So this one on the right, we went to Seville and we were in a bull ring and The collection became more glamorous because that was the time where the celebrities were coming to us much more. So everything had to be younger, more funky, more fashionable. We were doing fashion shows that were crazy events. We'd fly in 30 models, and always at least 3 of them were well-known top model faces. Carla would come, Kylie would come, and then we had about 1,500 guests there. We built these stages. Every year, the stage was new. It was not just a straight runway. I had one year where it was 3 floors with staircases, and money was no object. It was whatever you want to do, Brian, do it.
Yeah. During, I guess, the 80s and 90s, when it was so much money, I guess, was flowing into to fashion.
And then we changed advertising agency. Up to now, we had the same advertising agency from the start in Munich. And this was the first time we went with a New York agency. This guy who was an art director for American Vogue. And we spent a lot of money on the photographers for this. The one we had before were expensive, but this was Steve Meisel. And Steve Meisel was...
incredible.
Is still the #1 fashion photographer worldwide. Working with him, completely different kettle of fish. You know, with all the other ones, you know, you'd have dinner with the people, you'd meet them, you'd travel them. Stephen Meisel is a bit like a hermit. You know, he said we had to book this studio in New York, but we had to book 2 studios. Because one studio was a closed studio where he would set everything up, we'd have the models. And then we had Pat McGrath, who's the most famous makeup artist. She had 6 assistants. We had Darren in New York doing the hair, who had 6 assistants. And nobody was allowed to go in the studio, although we were paying for it. The marketing CEO, the CEO and the marketing people came over. They were not allowed to go in the studio. I was, because the only way I managed it was because I got in great with Pat.
Oh, no.
And Pat said, come on in. And once he got to know you, he felt more comfortable, but otherwise he hated shooting with any stranger around him. Yeah. So to be able to be part of doing these images was a really, really exciting time. And we did groups of girls. We had like 6 of the top names of the day all at once in the studio. So we're talking big money for these pictures.
Yeah, I think you can definitely get a sense of that. Just the
and then we started to do these fancy covers on the catalogue. It was like a cellophane cover with the dots, and then we did hard covers instead of the soft covers. So we were spending a lot of money on this. Again, the groups of girls. And then these were my last 2 collections where we changed agency again. We went with this agency in Paris, and everything was much simpler and much softer. This was a special shoot I did, Linda Evangelista. This was where she was not working anymore. It was years after. This was 2006. So she'd not been working for years. And I had the idea, 2005, and I had an idea I want to use Linda again. This was with the ad agency in New York, and they said, Brian, you know, like, you're thinking of the old Linda. You know, she's not like this anymore. I said, no, I want Linda. I think she'll be really good. And again, through the connections through Pat, and through Stephen Meisel, the photographer. We only did 6 pictures with her. You know, that was all she was willing to do. But I'm really, really proud of these pictures because no one else was using her.
Yeah. And you were known as the king of couture at Escada. So how did that couture journey come about?
It started off, as I say, you know, when we were working on the collection, I started to make these few evening dresses, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. You know, that we were doing more and more of them. And I said to Wolfgang, I said, I think we should do a separate collection. We've got Escada, we've got Escada Sport, and we have all these dresses that are getting great press, and the celebrities are loving them. We should give it its own label. It needs its own area in the shop. So we introduced this thing called Escada Couture, which were mainly evening dresses. And we had in all the big stores around the world a separate couture room. And then this was basically the start when all the celebrities were coming knocking.
Yep.
Because no one offered such a big collection we did. I mean, we would have 50 evening dresses.
Yeah.
If a special customer asked for one in a different dress, we made it. It was no problem. We did these photo shoots to get more of the lifestyle type thing. So we'd show like a wedding atmosphere. We'd show, parties, Oscar type thing. Again, Carla Bruni here in the hotel. Yasmin Le Bon, so Simon Le Bon's wife. So we did this big thing, and it just blew up. And this is where we got the most press from as well.
Yeah, you can definitely.
And then these were each season the catalogue, and then we had one where we showed background from fashion shows, then fashion show pictures. Sometimes we did special shoots for it. We just tried to do every season something different, and it wasn't just dresses. We had evening jackets, suits, and we were then the #1 destination spot for evening wear in America.
Yeah.
And then the last 3 couture catalogues we did, each cover was a white one. The one on the left, this was Kylie Bax. This was actually the Oscar dress I did for Kim Basinger the year before, or the season before, and we made it then as a wedding dress in white. And then this dress on the right was like a 2-piece, all hand beaded, with a themed cowboy. Each fashion show I did on kind of themes.
Yeah.
So one time we had a Scottish theme, so I would always dress like however the main theme of the collection was. So we had one time where the finale was all tartan, and I of course had my kilt on.
Yeah.
And then this one was all kind of sexy cowboy, so I got these beaded rhinestone jeans made for me. So I came down with a cowboy hat, and so we had a lot of fun with it. It was kind of tongue-in-cheek.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it became like a thing.
Yeah.
We had a lot of fun, and we had after-show parties. We had celebrities flying in for these shows. My very first main celebrity was Angela Bassett here. And we ended up dressing her for so many different events. She became a good friend. I'd have dinner with her when I came over to LA. She wore us to all our PR events and everything. And she was the first one that really started us off. Angela, I did her wedding dress as well. So she got a lot of friends to come to Escada. Olivia Newton-John, I designed her costumes for Las Vegas. My biggest regret is I never went over. She invited me and Ferdinand over to come and see her. And my biggest regret is he never went. Minnie Driver, she came to a lot of events. Jane Seymour, I met her on the set of Dr. Quinn Medicine Woman. Ended up designing a lot of things for her. Golden Globe daughter, this was an event in New York where she chose something. She did a lot of press for us as well. Andy McDowell. Catherine Zeta-Jones, Princess of Monaco, Paula Abdul, Gloria Stewart, for instance, Titanic movie. Nobody wanted to dress her because she was an older lady. And I said, bring her on,
Yeah, for like
we'll do it, absolutely.
Hollywood.
And, Whitney Houston, Julie Delpy, Amy Poehler, the dress she's wearing here, I have here on the stand. Christina Aguilera, Celine Dion, that was amazing. And Halle Berry, beautiful woman. Laura Haring, this is the dress she wore over there for Mulholland Drive. This is when I was with Basler. I'd made this dress for the fashion show. And then Sylvie Mais, this very famous celebrity, she was married to a footballer, a big TV star in Germany. I invited to this event I did at Monte Carlo where my husband Ferdinand was singing in front of Charlene. I was sitting at the table with Charlene, with Albert opposite me with the Begum, and Sylvie was wearing this dress. The stylist from Oprah Winfrey saw the dress and came to me and said, Brian, I love that dress, would you make it for Oprah? So I made that dress for her for the cover of a Christmas issue of magazine. She wore it on the cover, and then she asked me to make her another dress, which I did here as well, because somebody said, I love that dress, you're never going to wear it again, Oprah, can I have it as a wedding dress? And she wrote back, she said, I'm never going to wear it again, you can have it. This was on ABC TV, it was on ETV, it was on the evening news, it was all over the world. The publicity we got from this, and then she'd forgot to ask me if she could give away the dress. So I got this panic phone call. Don't worry. Like, do it. But that was amazing. The thing was, because it was like family. You know, I had my 19 designers, but I would take them out to dinner at night. You know, we'd go for a drink together. They knew me like nobody else knew me. You know, like my right-hand girl. I've got this thing when my ears go red, that means I'm about to explode. And I'm one of those that I'm very, very calm and very easygoing, but when I get mad, then I explode. And she could recognize that. She'd be, right, everybody out, go for a coffee. What is it? What do you need? What do you need? You know?
Yeah.
But having a great team around you, you don't feel the pressure. You know, I mean, when I left Escada, it was a business of 650 million. And I was one of those designers who would always read the sales through report, know what was selling, what can we do better, meet the customers. But it was having a team that I could trust, that they didn't just support me, that I could also give them stuff to do, and I trusted them. But that to me was the most important thing, is being around people. Same thing with the models. I was very loyal to the models. I'd always go back with the same ones because I'd rather have a good time on a photo shoot than somebody who's unknown.
Yeah, as you say, the people that surround you are so important. Yeah, and you can, I think, really tell that with that career journey. Yeah, I think we probably could have spent hours more talking. But yeah, if everyone could join me in thanking Brian for such a inspiring chat
Thank you.
this evening. It's been so wonderful and such a pleasure and a privilege to speak with you.
It's been great. And I have some magazines at the back there if you'd like to have a look through some of the highlights, and that's some of the couture dresses I have here. And thank you for coming.